The story of Easter. What an awfully sad day it had been for the friends of Jesus. They had stood watching sorrowfully as Jesus hung on the cross dying. They didn't understand why it had to happen. They believed that Jesus was the Son of God, and they remembered how he had healed the sick and made blind people see. They remembered how he had fed thousands of people with just a few loaves of bread and fish. They remembered how he had caused dead people to come back to life. He was such a good, kind man. Why did he have to die? Just before the sun was beginning to sink into the west, one of Jesus' friends noticed that Jesus had died. He hurried and went to Pilate and asked if he could have the body of Jesus so he could bury him. When Pilate agreed, two of Jesus' friends carefully wrapped Jesus' body in clean cloths. Then they took him to a tomb to bury him. The next day, the Pharisees started thinking about Jesus. They were the people who wanted to kill Jesus. They remembered how he had taught them, saying that he would rise again after 3 days. They were worried that it might be true. They also thought that Jesus' disciples would remember and might try to steal the body from the tomb, just so they could say that Jesus rose again. They went to Pilate, suggesting that the tomb be closed up with a huge stone and that guards be placed all around the tomb. Just before daylight on the next day, the most amazing thing happened. There was a great earthquake. An angel from God came down from heaven, moved the gigantic stone away from the door of the tomb, and sat on it. The guards began to shake with fear. They fell down to the ground as if they were dead. Mary and some other women had decided to get up very early in the morning and go to visit the tomb where Jesus was placed. While walking down the road, they were discussing how they were going to get inside the tomb. They had brought along some spices and perfume that they wanted to place on Jesus' body. They knew the huge stone had been placed in the doorway, and they had no idea how they were going to move it. What a surprise they found when they reached the tomb! The stone had already been moved, and there was an angel sitting on the stone. The women were quite afraid, but the angel spoke gently to them. "Don't be afraid. I know that you have come to see Jesus. He is not here, for he is risen just as he said. Come inside and see the place where he lay." The women went inside the tomb and found it empty, just as the angel had told them. The angel spoke to the women one more time. "Go quickly and tell the other disciples that Jesus has risen from the dead, and he is going into Galilee, where you will see him." The women did just as the angel had told them. They ran quickly from the tomb with fear and great joy to tell the good news to the other disciples. But when the women found Peter and their other friends and tried to tell them the good news, no one believed them. When the women persisted, Peter decided he needed to find out for himself. He ran all the way to the tomb. He went inside. He saw the cloths that had been wrapped around Jesus, but the body was not there. He wondered if it could possibly be true. Did Jesus really rise from the dead? Was he really alive? Two of Jesus' other friends were going on a journey to a village called Emmaus. As they walked and talked, they discussed all the things that had happened over the past few days. A man came along and joined their group. He walked along with them and wanted to join their discussion. They began to tell this man about how Jesus was crucified on the cross. They talked about how the women had found the empty tomb. As they continued their journey, they invited the man to come in with them and have dinner. When they sat down to eat their meal, the man picked up a loaf of bread and broke it in pieces. Then he prayed for the meal and gave the bread to the men. At that very moment, they realized the man was Jesus. They had been talking to Jesus the whole time and didn't even know it. Then another strange thing happened. As soon as they realized who it really was that sat at the table with them, Jesus disappeared. They talked about the wonderful time they had talking with Jesus down the road, and they just couldn't help talking about his strange disappearance. They got up from their meal and returned to Jerusalem, where they told all the other disciples the good news that Jesus really did rise from the dead and had talked with them. As they were talking, Jesus again appeared to them. They were afraid and thought that they were seeing a ghost, but Jesus told them not to be afraid. He showed them his hands and his feet, where he had been nailed to the cross, so they would believe it really was Jesus. When they saw the nail holes in his hands and feet, they finally believed that Jesus had risen from the dead, just like he said he would. They were so happy and joyful to have Jesus with them again. They were so excited that they had to tell everybody the good news that Jesus really is alive.
Hey children, guess what time it is?
Object lesson time?
Actually, we're not going to do an object lesson this week.
Aww.
But Erin Naomi is going to show you how to make an Easter craft.
Yay!
Good morning. We're going to be making the scene of the empty tomb with our clay. So first of all, take your gray ball of clay, knead it a bit to make it more pliable. And then pinch off about a third of it and lay it aside. And make the rest into a ball and flatten into a thick pancake. Make it about the size of your mom's hand. Something like that. Then take your styrofoam cup, one with the hole in it, and cover it with the clay. Your styrofoam cup is kind of flimsy, so be careful how much you bend it and poke it. But it's going to be your mold to help support the tomb. Poke in the hole for the door, the opening. Doesn't have to be perfect. Can look pretty rugged. and set it aside. Then take another hunk about the size of a giant gumball, roll it in a ball, and then flatten it. This is going to be the stone that sealed the grave, the tomb, and lay that aside. Then take your brown clay and form it into a rectangle shape, something like this. Flatten it. This is going to represent the bed, the place where they laid Jesus' body. Something like that. Put it on your plate, close to the center, but off to the side. Then take your bigger piece of fabric and lay it beside the bed. And then your small piece of tissue, this represents the napkin that was on Jesus' face. Fold it neatly and put it at the head of the bed. In John 20, John mentions that the napkin that was about his head was not lying with the linen clothes, but was wrapped together in a place by itself. There's a significance to the napkin being placed neatly at the head. Ask your mom and dad what that significance is. Okay, let's put the tomb on top of the bed, over the bed, and the stone. There. And now we'll get our green clay and pinch off 2 hunks. That'll be about the diameter of a nickel. And make 2 long strips of those. Place them alongside the tomb, flatten them just a little. This represents grass. And then your pink and your yellow clay. Make tiny little balls from both the pink and the yellow. About 4 or 5. Okay, now take your green toothpicks and stick the sharp end into your little ball. These are representing flowers. And stick them in the grass. There you go. You can add an extra dimension to your scene by taking your little piece of paper and writing on it, "He is risen." There you are. Now you may still have some clay left, and you can add your own special effects. You can take chunks and make like boulders, set them along the sides of the tomb, make it look more rugged. Like so. Or maybe you want to make a smaller tomb like this. Or smaller yet. The day that Jesus died was the darkest, saddest day ever, but it was redeemed when Jesus rose from the grave 3 days later. Let's talk about the message that the angels gave the women that came to the tomb. The angel said, "He is not here, for he is risen." And that's our message today yet. He is alive. Jesus is alive, and because he lives, we can live. He is risen.